Hello and welcome to My Roman Empire, the podcast where a special guest tells us about the pop culture moment in their life that lives rent-free in their mind, i.e. their Roman Empire. We are Awkward Prods, your Roman Emperors. I am Joseph Martin.
I'm Linus Carp.
And on this episode, our very special guest is the one and only Mike Reiss. Hello!
Hello! Nice to be here. What a pleasure.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, the main thing is we're now inside away from the rain in
Yes.
New York City. Who would have thought that the one day we chose to walk somewhere rather than getting the subway was the day that it throws it down on us?
Obviously. But,
And we're in New York between Avenue A and B. And if you don't know New York, it might as well have been in Wales.
Yeah, it's quite far out.
Yes.
It's like, oh, the East Village, that's not too bad. And then the more we kept walking, the more, like, as soon as I go past Katz's Deli, I'm like, well, now I'm in no man's land.
That's it. I mean,
they
they ran out of numbers.
Yeah.
We're numbered streets. This is a negative Second Avenue.
Yeah, my main knowledge of avenues for America growing up was Avenue Q. So
Obviously.
I feel like I'm there now at this point. Sorry, Lee, let's go on.
Oh yeah, just to say that our guest today is a writer to whom many, us included of course, we hold responsible for creating some of the best TV comedy ever. He was the writer for The Simpsons, including being the showrunner for seasons 3 and 4. He's also created the animated series The Critic and Queer Duck. He's an author of numerous children's books, films, plays, and a biography, and a 4-time Emmy winner. Mike Reiss, we are so thrilled that you're with us today.
How does that feel to be like, oh no, I have done all of those things with my career?
There's a point where you go, oh, I made the cut. You know, I have a career not to be embarrassed about. You know, you don't get really proud, and you know, any good thing you worked on was a big collaboration. But it's nice that, like, you know, for the first 8 or 9 years of my career, I'd say I'm a TV writer. Here's what I write. Now let me explain to you what it is because you've never heard of it. So with The Simpsons, it's great. You know, you don't have to explain it. People light up all over the world when they hear it, or at least they nod appreciatively. They'll go, oh, my kids always had it on in the house. So that's a great thing.
When did you decide or realize that you wanted to be a comedy writer specifically within comedy?
I really fell into it. I mean, I loved writing. As a kid, I would just write funny stories and jokes, and I would show them to my mom, and then I'd put them in a drawer. I was mostly better out than in. I just would have this stuff in my head. I'd write it down. Ooh, I'm glad that's out of me. I never thought I'd be a comedy writer because I didn't know anyone who did it. I didn't know how you did that. I mean, I wanted to be a comedy writer the way kids want to be an astronaut or a cowboy. I just thought, oh, wouldn't that be cool? But I always just thought, well, I'll be a funny lawyer when I grow up.
What was in the house growing up for you? Like, what comedy were you exposed to that made you sort of be like, oh, funny, like that's the thing that I want to do, I can write those?
I am very fortunate just to grow up in a house that loved comedy. And again, nobody thought you would do it professionally, but we loved jokes in our house. And in the family bathroom that we all shared, we kept this 800-page book called the Joey Adams Joke Encyclopedia. Right. And we'd all read it on the toilet, and we knew this book by heart. This was the family Bible. Mm-hmm. And then, again, this will make me sound a million years old, but we would gather and watch variety shows, the whole family, 5 kids and my parents, and we'd watch the Ed Sullivan Show and just wait for the comedian. We'd sit through 55 minutes of boring acts just to see 5 minutes of the comedian. And it was important in my house. You know, there are these homes, especially in America, it's all about sports and, oh, teach your kid to play baseball. And for us, being funny was the important thing. And everyone in my house is funny. When I first walked into a comedy writer's room, I just go, oh, this is like dinner at my house. It was nothing special.
Great. And have your siblings used their funniness or comedy in like their work at all? They are entertained. They're all teachers, and they're all entertaining teachers. My sister was a speech therapist and wrote a joke book for speech therapists. And,
wow.
And my brother was an aspiring stand-up comedian, and he gave it a shot. And it just, you know, he couldn't go all the way. But they're, you know, it's good they're teachers. They have an audience every day, and I watch them teach, and they're amusing. My brother, who was the comedian, is a math and SAT tutor, and gosh, he's 70 now or 71, and he works with teenagers, but they love him. He just doesn't take any of it seriously, and he's always kidding around with them.
I mean, those are the teachers that I remember from my school days were the ones that made us laugh, and the ones that were silly and it didn't take it seriously.
Yeah,
Like,
and I mean, maths always needs to be a bit more fun, I think. So, yeah.
yeah, we had a science teacher who it's just tiny things, like when we, depending on what we scored in a test, got us a different level, got a different stupid word that we could call ourselves for the rest of the day or whatever. And like, I remember very little of the science he taught me, but I remember those bits. I remember scoring the quiz, and that's what made it important to me to get it right. Was not like, oh, then I'll learn about science. It was, well, if I get that, then I get to use the, or like whatever, I get to be called boff-tastic or whatever it was that we used.
Oh, so you wanted the attention.
Oh yeah, always. Why do you think I'm doing a podcast?
I mean, school is so boring that like a joke. I remember, one joke in a class. It was like water in the desert. Oh, thank God, this will keep me going. Oh, you're really human, teacher. And the jokes were usually terrible from teachers, but
Of course.
at least they're trying,
Also, I think like as a student, right, you're kind of crying out for individuality or some semblance of like your own personality at that informative age. So if you as the student can be the funny one, like I think there's a lot to be said for being the class clown in that way, because it helps form your identity, it helps form a sense of self, and then like you're the one that makes people laugh. And like that's what we like to do in our work, is we want to make people laugh, make people have a good time.
Were you class clowns though? Were you?
I think I was a class clown to the annoyance of my teachers.
Okay.
I think I try to find. I think I mostly, maybe my teachers would say different, but I think I mostly try to fine line between being not enough of the class clown to really be in trouble with the teachers, but so much that I think most of them enjoyed it a little bit as well. So I'd be gently brought back into line, but I don't think I was too much of a douchebag in that sense.
I think I was too much of a teacher's pet. I mean, I think I had my moments of class clown, especially when I was younger, but then I think I became more of a teacher's pet, and yeah.
Were you good students? Did you get good grades?
Oh, I got terrible grades.
Oh, okay.
Well, distinctly average, middle of the line grades. Yeah.
I got good grades, which
you
I've
did.
not really put to use.
Oh, your writing's very clever.
yeah.
You're a very intelligent man. So we'll come on to your Roman Empire in a few minutes, but it would be remiss of us to not talk about The Simpsons.
Okay.
In this room, and you've spent your entire career talking about this show, but it is your fault for creating one of the best series of all time. Do you want to open up The Simpsons questions?
Well, we've heard you talk in interviews beforehand how you said that going into it, you took it because a lot of people rejected it, didn't want it.
Right.
Did you have hesitations going into it?
Yes, I did. I had. It's funny because these names will pop up later in the show. We had two friends, Al Jean and I. He was my college roommate and became my writing partner all these years. We had two friends. They were just kind of an older version of us in college, named Max Pross and Tom Gamble, and they have the most stellar career in TV comedy. They worked not only on all the great shows, they worked on them when they were great, the great years at Saturday Night Live and Letterman and Seinfeld. So and everybody loved them. Everyone wanted to work with them. And they had so many offers. If something came along they didn't want to do or couldn't do, they would pass it off to Al Jean and myself. And so that's how we got The Simpsons. They didn't want to work on it. And I didn't want to work on it either. They were working on a sitcom on Showtime Network called The Boys, about a bunch of old Jewish comedians. Right. And I thought, that is so up my alley. I really wanted that. And they took that job and turned down The Simpsons. And so it was just a summer job, or it was supposed to be. I'm working on The Simpsons all summer thinking, I could be writing The Boys. Why am I wasting my time with this? I mean, it's very hard for people to know what people thought of animation back in 1988 when The Simpsons was starting. It was crap. It was universal crap. It was Saturday morning TV shows produced as cheaply as you could. And then every other year, Disney would put out an original terrible animated movie, Rescuers Down Under, and stuff like that. So nobody had any interest in working on The Simpsons. And in fact, that first season, before it came on, there were no, there were no real writers on the show. I mean, there were 8 of us, I think, and except for Al Jean and myself, none of them had ever written a TV script. They were joke writers and some sketch writers. One guy was a sports writer, and another one was an advertising man.
Wow.
This is the best they could do. They couldn't get one professional to work on the show.
And so when you're sat in that room, knowing that, the two of you have written the script before, but no one's done this kind of half-hour show, especially not with animation, and you said in interviews that only like Nancy Cartwright had done voice acting before, all that kind of stuff. Like, how did it feel sitting in the room on that first day and going, oh crap, like, well, we got to come up with something? How the hell do you manage that writer's room on that first day?
It just sort of, everybody took to it so naturally, where it was just sort of, we go, well, what do we want to see on TV? And it was just kind of fun and wide open. We didn't feel a lot of pressure on the stories, on the emotion. A lot of that would be handed down to us from James L. Brooks, would tell you, here's the story we should be telling, right, and here's the emotion. We go, all right, sure, we'll do it. And but for us, it was all about the jokes and being able to write the jokes you never have an opportunity to write. I mean, Al and I had worked on a bunch of live sitcoms where it's just people on a couch talking like we're doing right now. Who wouldn't want to see this? And so to be able to write big visual jokes was so much fun, and then to write these smart and satirical jokes and write jokes, obscure references or movie parodies, the movies we knew the audience hadn't seen. Just to have that freedom was so much fun. It never was hard. That first year couldn't have been more easy. We'd roll in around 10 and leave at 5 in the afternoon, and we did what we've never done on any other show I worked on, which is, and then we'd hang around. We'd go out to dinner. We'd go see a big movie if it was opening. So it was fun. It was just a summer job. It was almost like camp.
And when did you then realize that, oh, this is way more than a summer job. This is actually taking off. This is actually a big thing now.
It happened with the premiere of The Simpsons. We'd worked on it all year, but it was sort of in the dark. When you make animation, you make the whole season of it. You write it, you record it, then you send it away for animation, and that takes 6 months. And so you're sort of done, and you don't know what you've done till the first episode comes back from full animation. And it's a famous story. They sat down and watched the first episode of The Simpsons, and it was catastrophic. Here's all of the Fox brass sitting down to see what they've just spent $13 million on. And it wasn't funny. The animation was bad. The animators had stuck their own jokes in the background. And the show was almost canceled before it came on the air. And then luckily, the next week, the second show came back fully animated, and it was great. But it was now too late to put the show on the air. So we were supposed to come on in September, and instead we waited for episode 9, our Christmas show, when we debuted with a Christmas episode, and that gave us 4 or 5 months to fix all the other episodes. Anyway, not your question. The question is, when did we know? So we had a premiere party at Christmas to launch the show, and it was in a bowling alley. They had so little faith in our show that it was probably $120 for the whole premiere party.
I think that's great. I'd
have a premiere in a bowling alley. Yeah,
great.
And at 8:00 when the show aired, they broadcast it on those screens where you usually see your bowling scores. And we're sitting there watching it go, and you really could feel this all over the room going, hey, this is good. This is really good. And then it was almost like a movie moment. It was like the end of It's a Wonderful Life. The publicist came in at the end of the screening with the sheaf of faxes. This is still fax. And she goes, every critic in America loves the show. And that was it. I mean, and no one had any idea till that moment. And then we walk into work the next day and found out we had debuted to the highest ratings in the history of the Fox network.
That's incredible.
So that was it. If you're asking how long it took to catch on or when did we know, we knew at 8:31 that night when the show ended.
You've unlocked. You have the next question to ask in a second, but you have unlocked a core memory for me that I had completely forgotten, which was for my 10th birthday. We had a party at a bowling alley, and like we didn't have a lot of money growing up, and I knew that was I'd asked for that a lot over like the preceding years, and I knew even then at 10 like that was a big thing for my parents to be able to do. It was a lot of money, and we played bowling, and then we went to a side room and had burgers and fries or whatever, and we watched on a tiny little square TV in the corner. We watched The Simpsons.
Oh, how great!
And I had completely forgotten that until you mentioned the bowling alley premiere. I was like, oh no, wait, I did that. I did that on my 10th birthday. That's yeah, that was lovely. Thanks for that. Thanks for unlocking that memory.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes, go on.
And you then also became a showrunner for season 3 and 4. And your first episode for season 3 is Lisa Goes to Washington.
Right.
Which is such a brilliant episode.
I think it stands out as one of the highlights of episodes.
Yeah.
Really and truly.
And we actually watched it the other night after you'd come to see the show. We put that on at home and watched, and we're just like, this is such a great episode. But it's also a very political episode, which is very interesting. And do you feel like going into the showrunner role, was that something that you were keen to make happen? Like, starting the season with something that is very funny but also political. Like, was that a very deliberate choice?
I don't know why we started the season with that one. I can't really remember what. I mean, because I know it was very hard. It was not a fun week to make the show. The big thing was the end of the show, the big climax where they talk about a little girl is losing faith in democracy and the whole government kind of pulls together. It just didn't work. It was the climax of the show, and it wasn't happening. And I don't know if this saved the show, but it was a good idea. It was at the montage at the end. I said, put time on it. Put a time clock on everyone so we can see this is all. The whole government is mobilizing within 10 minutes to save Lisa's faith in government. I don't even know if that's what the plot was. I haven't seen it in 35 years. But I don't know. I don't know why we did that. I just remember it was very hard. It had some good jokes in it. And what's kind of funny is they had actually started us 2 episodes before. They said, do the last 2 episodes of season 2. Mm-hmm. And one of them was catastrophic. It was the last one where Flanders opens the Leftorium and
but
Homer.
It was another classic.
And I mean, it just wasn't a great episode, but for some reason, the animation was screwed up beyond belief, where it was almost like a game. We started laughing watching it. It had come back so disastrous. I don't know why. And I mean, it wasn't the fault of the animator. Something had just gone wrong in Korea where they're animating it, where just something horrific every minute. It was like one of those games, how many things are wrong with this picture? People's heads were floating off their bodies, things like that.
See, I want that edit. I want that edit
I would
from
love
the
to see
vaults.
that too.
I want that out now.
I want to tell one quick story about
Please.
the first episode of The Simpsons, the one that didn't air, that almost killed the show, which was, we just buried that. What we did is, it was supposed to be our first episode. It wound up being our last episode, the one with the babysitter bandit and that kind of thing. And when we were doing DVD commentary, somebody said, hey, let's watch 5 minutes of that original cut of the show. And James L. Brooks, he's watching, he goes, stop. You got to stop. I can't bear to see this.
I mean, I suppose like you feel the pressure of what that show becomes, and then to look back at what it almost was, and that like it could have completely changed the trajectory of the show. I feel like that. Yeah, I could see why there would be some sort of like trauma in the back of his mind of like, actually, no, I don't need to.
It came so close to just not happening at all.
What I would love to ask as well is, obviously, like at this point, it's a big success. So as you say, like the strongest opening on Fox, and like so well critically received. Did you have any major critics at this point? In like the early 90s, who were the people who like really wouldn't get on board?
No, we sailed through, within the first 2 or 3 episodes, we would hear from Heartland America, Christian conservatives, didn't like the show, and so they didn't watch it. I mean, that was it. And very early on, anybody who was not going to like The Simpsons stopped watching it before the 1990s even began. So no, we had very few critics. I mean, famously, George H.W. Bush, the president of the United States, said America should be more like the Waltons and less like the Simpsons. And his wife, Barbara Bush, said the Simpsons is the stupidest thing I ever saw, which of course makes you think, have you looked at your kids, you know? And that was it. So the president didn't like us, and we read in a book, Ray Bradbury, the great sci-fi author, he didn't like the show. And I think, I'm not sure, I think Charles M. Schultz, the creator of Peanuts, didn't like the show. And but Ray Bradbury is one, he just didn't go for it. Everyone else loved it, and we had no idea. You know, I read in Newsweek, Steven Spielberg wears a Simpsons T-shirt to bed every night.
That's
and
wild.
one night, one of the producers walks in and goes, "You know who loves the show?" This is very early in the run. She said, William Friedkin, the director, loves the show. Oh, and we were working on Mr. Plow, and we said, all right, let's do an episode. Let's do a joke just for William Friedkin. And we wrote this joke in, a parody of his movie Sorcerer, and that was it. We just put it out there, and I don't know, 25 years later, I meet William Friedkin. I said, did you ever see this joke? He said, I love that joke, and I have a Simpson cell on the wall of my house.
So cool.
And we brought him to a reading, and people have never been as excited at the show, including, you know, when Elizabeth Taylor, Michael Jackson came to meet William Friedkin. He's just so amazing. And then we let him do a guest voice in the show.
That's so fun. I mean, and also getting those quotes from, you know, George and Barbara Bush, that is great. And that's kind of like better marketing than most praise.
That's outstanding in marketing when the president has something to say about the show, be it good or bad.
Yeah.
I would love to ask about the couch gags. So obviously I know that now they ship them out to lots and lots of different people submitting couch gags. When we were kids, we would call the couch gag the, quote, funny bit, because a lot of the humor went over our heads as little kids when we were watching it. But we'd sort of like scream, it was a funny bit, because we all had to be watching the couch gag moment. Were those done in-house with you guys at the very beginning? Or like, so how did those develop? And do you have a favorite couch gag?
Oh, that's a good one. They came up there like many, many things on The Simpsons. It's just stolen. We stole it from the Mickey Mouse Club, which was a show when we were kids. And the Mickey Mouse Club had a very festive opening, but then it always ended with Donald Duck hitting a gong, and something really bad would happen to Donald Duck. He'd get electrocuted, he'd vibrate, the gong would explode. It was just something, hey, what's going to happen today? I think they only had 4 of them, but they would rotate them. So we took that. We said, all right, let's have the Simpsons credits. You know, they would start differently with a blackboard and then end differently with a couch gag. And the blackboard's very hard to write, and we phased those out very early. But the couch gags were pretty fun. But again, it was a burden, you know, and the way we would do it is if we were working on the show and we managed to finish our work for the day at a decent hour, like 6 or 7 at night, instead of letting everyone go home to their families, we'd say, all right, let's write some couch jokes. So it was just an end of the day thing. We would write those things. And yeah, I love them too. They're just so free and wide open. And my favorite one, there was a night The Simpsons tied the Flintstones, or beat the Flintstones, for longest running animated show in prime time, which, you know, was like season 4. It was not that long. So we said, oh, let's have the Simpsons run into their couch, and the Flintstones are sitting there. And we got the Flintstones, and we had to pay them like guest actors. We had to pay Fred and Wilma and maybe Pebbles. We had to pay them $400 a piece to get them on the show.
That's hysterical.
So I like that one. And then Guillermo del Toro did one, which was just a horror spectacular. He just sort of melded The Simpsons with every horror movie trope. And I got to say, I liked his couch gag better than any of his movies.
That's so good.
Hey, look, you know, it's okay to peak in your career with a little aside thing. Do you know what I mean? Like,
but do you have, I mean, I think one thing that makes Simpsons so special as well is just like the richness of all the characters. Like, it's not just about the lead characters. Like, there's so many fun side characters. If you had to create a spin-off for one of the minor Simpsons characters, who would you choose and why?
Oh, well, I'll tell you, I actually have the answer because we did it. It was Matt Groening came to us, to me and Al, when we were leaving show running The Simpsons. He said, I want to do an animated Krusty the Clown spinoff. And we said, sure. And we worked it all. We had the whole pitch. Krusty the Clown was going to be a divorced dad with a big network show in New York, and his boss was going to be a Ted Turner type, and he would have a grouchy makeup woman. And we had the whole pitch, and then Matt Groening said, no, I changed my mind. I want to do a live-action Krusty reality show. And he was going to have Dan... Yes, he was going to have Dan Castellaneta in Krusty makeup work on a tuna boat or deliver a baby. That was the idea.
Oh, my God.
That might have worked, too, but we didn't do either of those. But I think at least a few people will be ahead of me on this story. A year later, Jim Brooks is coming to us. I want to do a show. I want to create a new show about somebody working on an early morning TV show like the Today Show. And Al and I just pull out our old Krusty the Clown pitch and turned it into The Critic. And that was everything in that pitch became The Critic. Divorced dad living in New York with a Ted Turner boss and a funny makeup one. So never throw anything away.
No, absolutely. So in an alternate universe, there is at least 2 Krusty the Clown spin-offs.
And I mean, that crossover episode with The Critic and The Simpsons is
fabulous.
So great. Funny.
And it birthed so many moments.
Boo Earns is probably the thing.
Boo Earns' man getting hit by football.
Yeah. But I think Boo Earns probably the thing we quoted to each other the most from Simpsons.
All the time.
Boo Earns.
All the time. Yeah, saying Boo Earns.
Yeah.
And of course you wrote one of Linus's favourite ever episodes, if not
my
your
absolute favorite.
right?
Yeah, the Shary Bobbins episode.
Shary Bobbins show. Okay.
I love her so much.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's Al and I together, I mean, we've supervised literally hundreds of episodes of TV. We've written maybe 40 scripts together. And that's our most popular one, Shary Bobbins. And it's the one I fought hardest against. I'm so embarrassed by my role and almost keeping that from happening. He always, for years, he just wanted to, let's have Mary Poppins work for The Simpsons. And it's funny, my objections, I just said, you can't bring magic into The Simpsons. Next, they'll have a genie or there'll be ghosts in the house. It's just, you can do it on Halloween. I even said maybe it'll be a Halloween episode, but we can't do the show. So I fought it on those grounds. And then I finally relented. But if you watch the show again, there's nothing magical about Shary Bobbins. Nope. She just stands around and watches stuff happen. Yep. She has no magic except she slides up a banister.
Yes.
Yeah.
And and then once we were writing the episode, I just wanted her to come in Act 3. And instead, she comes in like 5-10 minutes into the show. And I thought, that's too much, Mary Poppins. And because of it, the episode is enormously padded. Half that show is just The Simpsons watching TV. They watch Krusty. They watch Itchy and Scratchy. They watch a show before they were stars. They just sit around. And they also, to make the story work, they act like real dicks. They have to be really awful.
Yeah.
And Yardley Smith came to me, I think, during the taping of the show. She goes, why is Lisa so bad? I go, Anyway, I feel these are all solid objections, none of which matter. It's a great show. All the credit has to go to Al.
I do think it has one of the smartest and, like, in a way, like, bravest endings to an episode of The Simpsons, where just really, like, you create this thing, and it feels like, from a viewer perspective, it feels like you knew in the writer's room that Shary Bobbins could be this instant classic character. It's interesting to know the other side of it now, but just immediately killing her off.
Yeah, she gets sucked in the engine of a jet plane.
Yeah.
Genius decision.
Okay, real quick.
I think that's
trivia on that, which was a joke written for The Critic. We thought of it. It was going to be in The Critic, and then we got canceled, and we didn't get to do the joke. And we were doing Shary Bobbins. We didn't know how to end it, and maybe it was me. I like to think it was me, but it could have been Al. It could have been somebody else. Just said, "Hey, let's do that joke with the jet plane." And we put it in, and Al got cold feet about it. This is the one thing I want to take credit for, which was he was worried about it. We had a writer helping us out, Reed Harrison, and they're both getting scared. And I said, let's do it. Maybe because I was so opposed to Shary Bobbins that I just said, let's kill her. And I put the joke in, and wow, people love it. When I do a speech about The Simpsons, I do a lot of lecturing about the show. I always end with that, and it never doesn't work.
It must be weird in a way to think like those things you created so long ago still has this impact on so many people, and really is the inspiration for generations of writers, comedians, etc. Like we always list Simpsons not as one inspiration, but as like the biggest inspiration.
It's
and
amazing.
It really was the gateway into comedy, and we both grew up in small places. I grew up in a small village in Sweden. I remember my teenage years not being very popular, can you believe it or not, and I would come home every day after school. I would watch. There were 2 Simpsons episodes between 8 and 9 on one of the channels. I would watch those every day. The following days, they were rerun at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I would try and be home straight after school so I could watch the rerun from the day before and then watch the 2 again. And that was just really such a life-changing in a way.
That's hugely influential. That was my earliest form of comedy, really, that I remember watching. And the joy of it as an adult is watching them back and getting all the references I didn't get the first time around. And then watching them again, learning more about the world and spending more time in America and then getting those jokes.
Yeah, that's true. And also they still hold up so well today. Like you watch them today, they're still so funny and so great. And I was going to thank you, but now knowing that you didn't even want to do Shary Bobbins,
I know.
I'm not sure.
I'm off the show. Did you see it? Was it subtitled in Sweden or dubbed?
Yes, it was. So
they don't really do dubbing much in Sweden. They tend to do subtitles more.
Yeah.
I know in Scandinavia, I've heard kids learn to read early because they're watching The Simpsons subtitle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when Simpsons first started, they tried to subtitle it. But I guess because they tend to do it only for things for very young kids. But I remember when I was very little and Simpsons was on TV, I remember being like, a cartoon with subtitles, this is not right.
Yeah.
Queer Duck.
Queer Duck.
Your whole comedy career has been writing stuff that feels very ahead of its time, right? And
yeah,
feels
that
very
really
bold, very
was.
pushing. And Queer Duck is such an incredible example of that.
Yeah. So a show from the early 2000s about a queer duck.
About a gay duck.
Yeah.
And people don't know, not even in America, nobody knew. It was a term I used to hear as a kid. He's a queer duck. And it didn't mean gay. It was just he's an odd character. So it's the year 2000, and I was working for a company making internet cartoons. And in 2000, 2 things really struck me. One is the state of Colorado passed the law. And Colorado, we think of as kind of a liberal place. They passed a law saying gay people can't teach school, which is, outrageous and disgusting. And the other thing was I read an article saying there are no gay characters on TV. I mean, TV's loaded with gay characters now. This will be funny in hindsight, which was the article said, did you know gay men like Sex in the City? And it's like, I know, it's like, duh. But
What?
That was huge news at the time, that gay men like the show. And they said, well, this is the closest thing to gay men on TV, these 4 hags.
Wow.
And so that I just said, this is not right. Why are there no gay people on TV? And I worked on a show, I worked on the show Alf, which you also probably saw as kids. Yes. And that show had a gay producer. And so the writing staff, I think, was all straight, but everyone in the front office, everyone who did the work was gay. And they were such a happy bunch, and they'd all go to each other's houses every night and watch TV movies. Oh, Raquel Welch is in a TV movie. And then they'd be buzzing about it the next day. And I go, gee, these gay guys love TV more than anyone, and they can't see themselves on TV. So I just created Queer Duck about a gay duck and his gay animal friends, and I wanted him to be a gay Bugs Bunny and to be his Elmer Fudd to be straight conservatives, and I'm not gay, and I went to the producers. I said, if you'd rather have a gay writer handle this project, go ahead. And they said, you can do it. Make sure you cast someone gay as Queer Duck. And this is another one like The Simpsons, where I wrote the cartoons and we put them on and it crashed the internet. It was so popular from episode 1 that traffic to this website increased tenfold. And within 3 days, a German journalist flew to America to ask me about Queer Duck. And again, I just hit something just right. It's the thing I'm proudest of. Much prouder of Queer Duck than about The Simpsons or The Critic. I just thought, I did this with a good heart and good conscience, and it was all me. And my intended audience really loved it. And I won all kinds of awards, but I had to stay in the closet as a straight man for a year. They said people's perception of this will turn instantly if they know you're straight. And so reporters would come to the house and I would lock my wife in the bedroom and I'd hide my wedding picture. So I got away with it. I really love them. I don't know how they hold up.
I mean, you must have been the only man in Hollywood who has to do the reverse, hiding in the closet.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved the whole experience, loved the cast, loved how they came out. I worked with my fantastic animator, Seth Feinberg. We made a whole movie, a 72-minute Queer Duck musical film, and it was just me and him. And that was a great feeling.
And RuPaul made the theme tune.
Oh, yes.
Which is great.
It doesn't get much gayer than that.
That was it.
That's so fun. I mean, I think, let's go into the drum and unpack. We should probably just mention how we met.
Oh,
as well.
Yes.
So, I mean, we have been performing our show Gwyneth Goes Skiing in New York City.
At the time of recording, we are currently in New York City.
And we did one of the early shows of this run.
Yeah, you were there really at the start of the run.
And we did the show, and there were these two wonderful people on the front row, which was Mike and your wife Denise as well, who were sat there giving great energy all throughout the show. The show ends, and
you start our first standing ovation of the run in New York City. You were the first people up, so we were like, oh, yes, this is great. We've really smashed this.
And then you come up, speak to us afterwards. You're so lovely. Denise, who's just off camera right now, actually, she's here with us, outs you as a Simpsons writer straight away. And I don't know if you know who he is, it's Mike Reiss. And we're like, we know who he is.
Exactly who you are.
Tried to play it very cool, but inside we're very much screaming and could not quite believe what was happening. And that was just, for a moment I will hold on to forever, where not only were you there, but you were saying such wonderful things to us and leading our first standing ovation in New York.
First thing we did when we left the stage was text my family WhatsApp chat back in London, and it was it was kind of 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the morning for them, whatever it was. I was like, I need you all to realise what's just happened. Oh my God. It was a really, really special moment for us.
Oh, I'm so glad.
You were both so generous and really sweet, so thank you.
So, your show was a relief to me. We were just going over the day when Denise and I had flown in from Japan that morning.
Oh, wow.
We should have been in bed, but she goes, "Oh, I booked us 4 things tonight." And it's like, "Oh, Jesus!" Right? and it was 3 disappointments of different shades. And then finally, I don't know what it was, 9:30 at night. We go to your show, and I didn't know anything about it. It could have been a drama. I didn't know. I thought it was going to be a courtroom drama, and I get this, and it's a comedy. And I hope this isn't a terrible thing to say. I open the program. I go, "Oh, it's a guy in a dress."
Yeah.
And I go, I was going to leave, and I have nothing against drag shows or anything, except most shows, you put a guy in a dress, they go, well, our work is done here.
Yep.
What could be more funny for 2 hours than a man in a dress? And then your show started, and within 3 or 4 minutes, I go, oh, there's jokes in this, and there's a lot of jokes. And then your character were so funny, and
Thank you.
And then I was going, all right, just don't suck. I hope this doesn't suck. And it was funny, and it was everything I don't get in theater that I wish I was getting. It was so entertaining all the way through. And then, I don't know, about 45 minutes in, you did a Simpsons reference. You did Stupid Sexy Flanders. I go, oh, they know the show. All right. And it was sort of a deep cut. It wasn't an obvious Simpsons joke. So I go, all right, I'll go say, good, I'm glad. I'll talk to them after the show.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That means a lot. I think you're right. I think because our other shows as well, our other show about Princess Diana, Linus plays Princess Diana, and we're both massive fans of drag and the comedy that comes from that. But I think what our shows do is more character comedy. Like, yes, Linus is in a dress, but it's not that, as you say, that isn't the joke.
It's not the joke
Linus is
at
playing
all.
a character who happens to be a woman in a dress.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to scare Linus. You could do the show with a woman.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We had in the very, very first run, Linus was quite unwell when we were creating the show.
So we did get an understudy who is a woman.
Yeah,
like
fabulous
a great
woman,
actor.
Tara
But
Boland. She didn't have to go on in the end, but
No.
it was interesting to rehearse alongside her and be like, oh yeah, like this, like how does this change the character when it is a woman playing it?
And I think that's what's interesting with casting now generally. Like you see shows like Omari, which obviously is wonderful, but like how that role, which is written as a woman but can be played by any gender, any race, and I think that is just really fun.
So let's dive into the Roman Empire. So yes, we asked you ahead of the recording what your favorite kind of pop culture moment is, or something you think about a lot, and you have chosen Airplane 2.
Yes, I actually picked Airplane. Airplane 2 is where I come into the
of
story.
course, yes, Airplane, the Airplane series.
Yes.
So you were in the writers' room for Airplane 2, but so when did Airplane first come into your life?
Yeah, it's just kind of a little, almost a fairy tale. Al Jean and I, my writing partner, was my college roommate, and we're on campus in 1980, and there's posters all over campus. Come see a free movie tonight in the Science Center, one of the lecture halls. And that was free. You had us at free movies. We're college kids. We had no money. And we go in to sit down to see this thing, and it's a very, very rough cut of Airplane. It's Airplane, and Al and I are just sitting there going, and I mean, the movie had no ending. It had temp music. It was really slapped together, but we're sitting there going, well, this is the funniest movie I ever saw. And it was just sort of mind-boggling, and afterwards we dragooned the creators of the show. We brought them back to the Harvard Lampoon, and they didn't know what they were doing there. I think we really bored them, but we just wanted a piece of them because the movie was so great. And then that summer, the finished version of the movie comes out, and it's the #2 movie of the year, and I think it was the #2 comedy of all time. And we go, hey, we were there first. But that was it. It was a very magical moment. And then 2 years later, Al and I are on the set of Airplane 2, and we're actually writing that movie. And it was just sort of, it was sort of like, oh, you ask the genie, oh, please let me be a part of this. And there you are. And we're on the set with that cast, or most of that original cast. And again, it's part of the story is be careful what you wish for. Because it was so thrilling, but it was also a really hard job. And then the movie came out and thrilled nobody.
Which I think is unfair.
Yeah.
Because I think it stands up as a genuinely very funny, very entertaining movie. And I think that it's one of those things that maybe with time people come to appreciate in a better light. And you understand that, of course, you're fighting this incredibly difficult battle because the first movie is such a huge success that taking on a sequel is such a poison chalice, right? It's always going to be difficult to do that. But I do think with time, people relax from that first, like, oh, if it's a sequel to a thing I love, then we're probably going to hate it regardless. But I do think it stands up. I think it is a very good, like, it honors the first movie. You understand what the material is, what the jokes are, what works, and you put it into a sequel. I do think it stands up very well.
That's nice. Yes, I've watched it rise in public esteem over 40 years. I can't believe how long, there must be people going, what is this movie? It came out 45 years ago. Airplane 2 was 43 years ago. It's a long time ago. And that was it. It was not, it was a very strange position where these guys, sort of almost by fluke, these very original talents have made this great movie that nobody had ever made a movie like that before. And then they didn't want to make the sequel. They walked away from it. And so they bring in a guy who had written Grease 2.
Yes.
Which also has a cult following, which again, could not have been more pilloried at the time. Grease, too. So here he is. He'd had one writing credit. He's directing for the first time. And to help him on the set are two 22-year-old kids who've never written anything. And again, how did we get the job? My friends Max Pross and Tom Gamble turned it down and recommended us. So I owe them everything. And
What is it about Airplane as an original movie that you think, why does that comedy work? Why was it such a hit?
one thing that's very true about the movie is just how hard they worked on those jokes. And I don't know if they spent a long time on them or they're just brilliant writers, but they are different, smart jokes. You watch those, you go, how did they think of that? Every few minutes, how that could not have been easy to have come up with joke after joke. And then there's the sensibility, the studio wanted it to star Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase, and they said, no, we want these unknown actors, and we want to populate it with these dramatic TV actor, has-beens from our childhood.
Yeah.
And they really fought hard for that, and it went, nobody had done that. Nobody had ever thought, let's do that. Let's put these guys in. And those guys made the movie, your Peter Graves and Lloyd Bridges and Leslie Nielsen, not knowing what was going on. They didn't understand the movie at all. Like The Simpsons, they just thought it was going to be a flop and let's hope nobody sees this thing. And it just so worked. And I can jump ahead, 10 years to The Simpsons, where two things we took away is work really hard on every joke. Never put in a mediocre joke and say, well, this will get me from this joke to that joke. Every joke is important. And the other thing is the power of the surprise guest star. Cast the people you don't expect to see in comedy. And I mean, we do it all the time. They did it first. Anyway, so here we are 3 years later. We're making Airplane 2. And you got to remember, even now, but back then, you didn't make sequels to comedies. There's no Animal House 2. There's no Tootsie 2. You made no Blazing Saddles 2. You made your comedy, and that was it. And so nobody knew how to make a sequel to Airplane. And so the studio just said, just copy all the original jokes. Just do all the big moments, do them again with a twist. And so I think something people wouldn't know is the extras in Airplane 2, which is a spaceship, not a plane, they're the same passengers from the first movie. They don't know what to steal, so they go, well, let's just take the guy from seat 15A and he'll be in this movie too. Isn't that crazy?
Hysterical.
Yeah.
But also to track all those people down again. And
Yeah.
say, come back in and
Brought
do it
them
again.
all back. And we did our best. And every joke, almost every joke in Airplane is great. Airplane 2 famously has 4 or 5 great jokes, and they're the great bits we worked really hard on. There's a thing that's become a meme, William Shatner's entrance
Just about
in the
to reference
movie,
that,
where we go, nobody had used William Shatner in a comedy. Nobody thought, oh, this guy will be funny. And he was a total dick. I mean, he was just such a bad guy.
Oh, no way!
on set. Oh my gosh! But he's great in the movie. He's great in the movie. But we knew he needs a big entrance, and we sat there, Al and me and Ken Finkelman, the writer director, just working on it, what would be the great joke, and we came up with this joke where he appears on screen, but he's really behind a door, and that was a couple of days' work.
Yeah. But it's such a good moment.
Right.
When we were rewatching it the other day in preparation for this, so it came on screen. I grabbed Linus and was like, "Wait!
Yeah,
This is one of the best gags of the whole movie. This is so good. It's such a good bit."
And still lives on. Now all this years later, and it's still like, as you say, a meme.
Yeah.
How was it in that room and on set where the studio have said, redo all these old jokes, like keep the things that people loved about this first movie? How do you, as the writer, take that but still find a way to put your own spin on it? Because it must be quite odd to be like, well, I have my own original ideas, but what they're asking me to do is copy something.
Yeah, I watched the movie for the first time in 30 years, and a lot of things jumped out at me. One of them is the editing is terrible, just terrible. And this is an Oscar-nominated editor. He's not. We worked with him. We love the guy. He didn't know comedy. He won an Oscar. Got an Oscar nomination for The Hunt for Red October. Hilarious film. But I mean, there's so many places I would cut this and cut that shot and runs that went way too long. And I sometimes I think there's a great movie in there. There's still a movie. We shot a whole fantasy flashback scene that was a parody of beach blanket movies. I don't know if you know these movies at all, with Frankie Avalon and Annette Funicello. These 1960s bikini musicals. We shot this whole thing. We got the original stars, Frankie Avalon and Annette Funicello, and none of that made the cut. And I think that might have been funny in the movie, but it wasn't my decisions. I was very naive, and Al Jean was a lot smarter than me, which sort of goes through my career. Al is just smarter than anybody. He has a 180 IQ, and I'm just there to help out. But we're making the movie, and there'd be all this weirdness, or they'd say, let's just do this same joke again. And Al would go, I don't know about this. And I'd always go, they know what they're doing. Trust me, Al, they know what they're doing. No, they didn't know what they were doing. And when we're making the movie, I was so stoked. We'd go out to dinner with friends, and I'd say, this movie is going to be funnier than Airplane. And at one point, Al said to me, I think you should stop telling people that. So that was it. And the movie came out. And again, very thrilling to be on the set. And Ken Finkelman, I didn't appreciate this at the time. He just took us right into the process. We're on the set. We knew all the actors. They were all very nice to us. They would all pitch jokes to us. We were just kids, and we got to be part of the process, got to go to editing, got to go to all the test screenings and that kind of thing. We had one test screening that went through the roof. We were so excited. And then the movie came out, and it was just sort of, it wasn't a flop, but it sure wasn't a hit. It was just sort of a disappointment, a dudski. But again, people appreciate it more and more, and there's a great story. I've heard this. It was Quentin Tarantino was doing a podcast, and he was talking about working as an usher in a movie theater, and they were showing Airplane 2, and he would go see Airplane 2. He goes, and I love that movie. And the host goes, I think you mean Airplane. And he goes, no, I mean Airplane 2.
Justice.
So Quentin loved the movie.
So you are responsible for Quentin Tarantino's career, really?
Yes, we are. And then we wrote him into Itchy and Scratchy, and he turned us down. He turned us down. And we we were so shocked because he never turned anything down. When he at his peak of his fame, he was just everywhere, and we were so shocked.
Yeah.
And then years later, Al Jean ran into him. So why'd you turn us down? He goes, nobody told me. The offer never got to him.
Because I was like, you've worked with Al Jean a lot, and in various writers' room, we write together as a duo as well. And I think it's interesting when you write something how there are certain jokes that I know are mine and that I feel quite proud of. But there are also a lot of them where I'm like, I can't actually tell who came up with what. Do you feel that way? Do you have your proud things in a script, or do you just feel like, I couldn't even tell what's mine and what's Al's?
I generally can't tell what's mine. I know I write a lot of wordplay where you just scramble the words in a sentence or something like that. Not a pun, but just sort of almost an anagram of a sentence. I love word puzzles and word games, and very often those are mine. And so sometimes I can tell. Mostly I can't. I don't have a ton of great stories from the writer's room just because it's just focus. Everyone's just thinking really hard, and nothing that funny happens. Everyone's thinking, and it goes by very fast, hours, and suddenly it's 2 a.m, and you walk away with, it's not an unhappy experience. It's a fun job, but there's no real thrilling stories to tell from it.
Do you have particular jokes from Airplane 2 or from Simpsons, anywhere with Quid, like anywhere in your career, those particular jokes that you think were maybe underappreciated at the time, but you're really, really proud of? Like, actually, this moment was genius. It never got the attention it deserved.
There's a run in the movie. I don't think I can recreate it, but it was Al brought it up the other day where it's a guy who's on trial, and they said to him, he said he had flown with the hero Ted Stryker, and he says we were under fire. He was in charge, but he couldn't handle it. And the guy says, Buddy couldn't handle it? Yeah. No, Buddy was fine. Andy went to pieces. Yeah. Andy went to pieces. No, Andy was a rock. Buddy went to pieces. So it was that run, and apparently I just dictated that off the top of my head. And it went in the movie, and I got to say, it never got a laugh. I went to many test screenings. Nobody laughed at it, and I think they kind of kept it in either because they go, well, it's clever, it's not funny.
It's really smart. It's a really good run.
Again, that's the kind of
funny. Yeah.
That's the kind of writing I do. Very, very labor intensive. More. It doesn't always get laughs, but I stand by it. I go, I know I worked hard on this.
Within the first 10 minutes of Airplane 2, there is a direct reference to you.
Yes.
Yeah. How did that come about? Was that something that you pitched? Or
no. It was it was sort of freewheeling, and Ken Finkelman just stuck that in. It was kind of thing. There's a bunch of air traffic controllers, and they're saying things. Oh, that was the Supremes, and blah blah blah. And one guy says, "I have a collect call for Mike Reiss from his mother," and yeah, the director just stuck. I would never presume to stick my own name in the movie. He stuck that in. I felt a little bad for Al because he didn't get a similar shout out. And but then at the end, again, we would have gotten, by rules of the Writers Guild, no credit on the movie, and we had worked 6 months, day and night. Ken Finkelman, who wrote and directed the movie, was a communist. He really felt for the oppressed masses, but I have never had a greater oppressor than Ken Finkelman. He just worked us day and night on the movie. And at one point, he moved us into his house so that we could work round the clock. We slept on his couch, and he's making us write with him. I mean, he was putting in the work. We're working till 2 a.m, and Al is falling asleep on the couch, and Ken said, all right, get some sleep, but try to come up with some new stuff before you get up.
What?
How do you feel like this affects you today, and how do you feel like it stands up today all these years later?
Which, Airplane 2?
Well, both the Airplane series generally.
It's not even a series. We killed the series. We killed it with number 2. There was number 3 was written. These very talented guys had written part 3, which was just another retread. It was the same story yet again. And Ken Finkelman also had an idea. We were kicking around with him to remake this movie, Only Angels Have Wings, 1930s. A Howard Hawks movie set in a small airport in a jungle, and that was our idea to do Airplane 3. But, nobody went to see part 2, and that was the end of that. I just read a book on the making of Airplane where I saw these guys just worked really hard and had this very peculiar sensibility and stood by it and fought for it all the way through. And who were they? They were nobody. They had no credits at all, and there were 3 guys directing, which, they had to get a special waiver from the Directors Guild. It's something I just feel, I could say it 100 ways about anything in the history of comedy, which is, to my mind, comedy is really hard work. It's really, if you see something really great, it's because people worked really hard on it. And as I've said a few times already, the great jokes in Airplane were the result of very hard work, sometimes days of work.
We've seen, obviously, a reboot of The Naked Gun now with Liam Neeson. Do you think there is a world where we might see an Airplane reboot? Would you go on board for that if they asked you to?
Time for Airplane 3 in the jungle?
Oh, yeah. That would be interesting. I know so much more than I did now. And part of it is knowing, at the time there were jokes. Ken Finkelman had written the original script, and it was funny, and it was jokes all the way through. And I would always say, "Oh, keep that. That's funny. That's funny." But it's the old saying, "The good is the enemy of the great." The good is the enemy of the great. It was full of good jokes, but maybe they should have been great jokes. And in Airplane 1, they're great jokes. And that's it. In Simpsons, we always try for the great joke. And since then, in my work, I learned that, okay, they got to be great, Is that good enough is not good enough.
We were looking at rewrites. This will be aside from the edit, but we were looking before we came to New York with the Gwyneth Go skiing show. We were looking at rewrites and doing little edits to the script, and that was one of the things that we carried as much as possible. Our minds was, what if there are jokes that are 7 out of 10, cut them and keep the 10 out of 10s, and if you can make the 7 into a 10, great. With there's a joke in the show that we've tried 3 different ways over the last couple of nights because it's still not perfect yet, and it will get there, and I don't know what it's going to be.
We'll still keep tweaking it.
Yeah.
But with things like The Simpsons in those early days when you started there, it was something that feels like ahead of its time. Queer Duck is something that very much feels ahead of its time. When you look at comedy now, are there writers or people who you feel like they are doing now what you were doing then?
There's just comedy I appreciate and comedy I don't. There's a show, We Think You Should Leave. Is that what it's called?
Yes, I think you should.
The
Yes,
Tim Robinson sketch show. I just love it, and that's pretty different. It's pretty different sensibility. I love Rick and Morty, where I watch that show, and I know what's hard to do in animation. And in The Simpsons, we try to give you 5 minutes of the hard stuff every week. That show is nothing but hard stuff. But I will critique it. They lost one of the creators last year, and I go, oh, how's the show going to hold up? And it was fine. It was another great season. And then I watched the new season, and I go, it's not great, And it's not bad. It's still full of good jokes, but not great jokes. And I sense that. I understand, what people would say about The Simpsons for 25 years. Oh, it's not what it used to be. If you're giving people something excellent and then you give them something very good, they're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Mike Reiss, thank you so much. It's been such a dream talking to you. Thank you.
And
I love hearing myself talk.
You've taught us that Airplane actually is, I think we already knew one of the greatest comedies of all time, but actually I think you've taught us that Airplane 2 deserves much more attention and appreciation than it got originally. Frustrating you've had to wait 40 years for it, but nonetheless, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.